We're going fucking live here. So, I've been around picking up shit really fucking far away. So just a warning right up front, like this is probably, there's gonna be some spots in the stream that are gonna get fucking rough, okay? So just wanted to let you know that. Like we're probably gonna cut out a little bit, and I'll try to pay attention when it cuts out, and then hang out for a minute. Hey, good morning. Good morning, Mr. Bo. Good morning. Good morning. Pug dog. Why am I a pug? Is that a good thing or what? Good morning. Good morning. Sup, bro. Sup, bro. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. All right, so just a update here. I did a very long talk with Bacone last night. It was pretty awesome. We covered a shitload of topics. Everything ranging from like Ramadi all the way up to like renewable energy and the threat with China, human psychology, spirituality, like lots of different topics in it. And we went on for 4 hours. So I'm getting there's a viewer that assisted me in recording, and he's going to send me those files, and then I'm going to edit them down into manageable, consumable blocks by topic, and then I'll be putting those out intermittently. But we ended up doing a recording because it just made more sense than doing it on a live stream, because we really wanted to like be able to get into topics and not have to worry about the flow, or like some of the stuff that we talked about almost goes better in a different order, and so I might like rearrange some of the stuff in editing so that it has continuity and kind of flows. Let's see what else. So I guess the main point of this is that I wanted to discuss the Chinese-Indian situation, which is we haven't talked about yet, but it is very possible that the situation between India and China is the input to kick off World War III with China. And if you're not aware of this, like there have been for the last couple of years. So like if you're unfamiliar with history or with geography, like most of us, like China through the Himalayan mountain range butts up against India. They have they connect, and then there's like Pakistan's region is right by there too. That's all like very compressed towards like the western border of China. And so in the Himalayan range, China has had long-standing disputes with India on mountain territory. And so these have ranged in everything from one of the most recent events, in the last couple of years, there have been reports of they'll have a fucking Himalayan fight club up there, where the border guards from China will fucking have like a fucking boxing match with the fucking border guards from India. And it ranges from everything like that into like little, micro conflict wars. Fuck, did I just go the wrong way? Yeah, I think I did. Alright, I'm gonna turn around. So this is like a historical animosity that's built up for a long time, and like the history of it really starts with like the Sino, like the Sino fucking Indian conflict, which would have been, I think that would be like 1962, and that was like a small skirmish conflict in the Himalayan mountains. First of all, I feel it necessary to just point out, like, imagine, if you're gonna have a war, like war is wrong and terrible, and we shouldn't do it. But if you're gonna fucking have one, you might as well pick the Himalayan mountains, because that shit is, if you can imagine Indian forces going up against Chinese forces in the Himalayan, that's fucking aesthetic as fuck. Like, I don't know, it's almost like surreal, you know what I mean? It's pretty wild. It's pretty like a trippy setup for like a conflict, but that's where the shit goes on. And So you basically got like fucking in the 1962 conflict, right? This would be post. So to give you perspective, right? You've got China at this time has had a split with the Soviet Union over like interpretation of like Marxism, and then the split between the two is a philosophical one. So like there's still the USSR and China are still, you know, cooperating in certain respects depending on conflicts on like supplying arms and stuff to all these little micro conflicts during Soviet or communist expansion. But they had like a noticeable split in disagreement of ideology, and that had to do with the Soviet Union's willingness to work with the West in like certain respects that they deemed more you know, more beneficial to the greater good of communism, whereas China was more like hardcore, like, you know, capitalist bad, and like no playing with them, don't play with them. And so that was like the basic cause of the split. Now in the United States in 62, this is like, we're talking like this would be the same year as the Cuban Missile Crisis situation. And for the Cuban Missile Crisis, damn, this road is rough. In the Cuban Missile Crisis, you had a bunch of Soviet missiles being moved into Cuba that were detected, and this would have been post the reason that missiles were moved into Cuba was in response to the failed Bay of Pigs operation. And if you're not familiar with that, the Bay of Pigs operation was basically like Eisenhower, before he goes out of presidency, fucking gives like a big ass 13 mil check to the CIA to stifle you know, Castro in Cuba. And then so the CIA you know, fucking makes a little invasion force with local nationals in Cuba, and then launches an attempted takeover of Cuba, and then that's where you get the Bay of Pigs fiasco. And it was like, you know, that's like where you got a ton of the animosity between JFK and like the CIA, was because of this, because the CIA was so super secret that like they didn't, you know, they didn't really care to like let the country in on this stuff. They were just like doing their own thing and basically like gonna cause fucking World War III because of what, you know, because that's who they work for. But so like Kennedy at this point is super like getting into his paranoid state, you know what I mean? Because it's just like there's just like multiple, it's like Kennedy's perspective is that, like in 1962, Kennedy's perspective is like, no matter what he does and no matter what he says and no matter how much he tries to like come to resolutions of you know, peace and patience, it's like he just can't stop with fucking little wars popping off all over the fucking place. Like it's just they're just popping up and it's completely out of control, and he's like feeling like he's losing control. And so Kennedy goes into like shutdown mode in a lot of ways. And the fucking when the Indian Chinese conflict skirmish in the Himalayas broke out in 62, the Indians ended up actually getting supplied through the Soviet Union because they requested support from the United States. And then Kennedy was like, oh no, not these motherfuckers again. Like, I'm not gonna do this. And so he refused like any kind of assistance for the most part. I'm sure there was like secret stuff going on, but at least on like public paper, the United States wasn't gonna supply India. And so India turned to the Soviet Union, which is very interesting because, you know, this conflict was between China and India. So you had like Chinese communists fighting Indians who were getting supplied by Russian communists. It's just a very fucking, you know, wacko situation that like only the creativity of humanity could come up with. And so like that was kind of a small conflict. Like you have basically like on the Chinese side, they lose like just under 1,000 people. On the Indian side, they lose like a few more because this is actually within, you know, traditional territory of, you know, like Indians, and I believe. So you had a lot of like Indian civilian casualties. They had a few more casualties. So the fallout of that animosity leads to the fucking, you know, continued tension that lasts until this day in that border region. So what's going on right now is that China has deployed 5,000 troops to an area. Okay, we're back. Are we still streaming here? I got fucking knocked out. Alright, so where were we? We were talking about the current escalation, right? So in the last like day or 2 days, China has moved motherfucking 5,000 troops to an area called Pong'an Sao, which is a glacial lake. India has moved a large number of Indian troops up to their side of the border. And this is just like a continued escalation from tension that's already existed. But the movement of 5,000 troops is significant because it's a shitload of people to be coming up there. So this is just occurred, and it's not really, like, the MSM isn't really talking about it, which kind of leads me to believe that, like, there might be something there. Because if the MSM isn't talking about it, this could be a setup of, like, you know, like, oh, we just never knew, you know. It could be like, oh, wow, what a surprise. Look, China's, you know, fucking this shit up now, like, after some conflict breaks out. So it's something worth looking at. It could very well be that an engagement between India and China is what will be used to draw on the United States versus a, or perhaps it's just like a secondary backup trigger if the United States doesn't get on board with, like, wanting to fucking destroy China, right? Because if you get India going to war with China, then, you know, you can easily pull in the United States, right? Like, the timeline that I've had a lot of people ask me about timeline of when the Chinese war is going to start. And I've had a lot of people ask me how to handle a draft. So I guess we should talk about those two things. So the timeline is basically, you know, it's a set thing. It's going to occur at some point, but when is not for sure. Certainly this has to do with like things financially being in place, and it appears that they already are, at least in the macro. So, like, I don't know what the fuck they're waiting on, but, you know, there's some kind of, maybe it's just setting up all of the background necessary to fill in the historical narrative of, like, why the shit happened, and distance it from, like, the actual reason, which is that, you know, people just basically are, like, paying for it to happen. But perhaps that's it. Perhaps that's attributing to the delay that we're currently trying to figure out how they're going to canoe me and everybody else or whatever for the fucking changeover, so they can handle their shit when this shit pops off and everybody's, you know, going nuts. So I would expect, like, based on the pace and intensity of the you know, news media escalation and political rhetoric leading to escalation both in the United States and China, I would say this is, like, imminent, you know. But what imminent means, I don't know. But you know, this shit is, I mean, this thing is on the fucking stove cooking, and it's gonna fucking blow over. And I guess it's kind of just up to, like, the governments, the respective governments, to judge the pulse of the population of when they feel like it's, like, a good time to pop it off, you know, and get everybody's tension high enough to where when they pop it off, people aren't going to ask questions like, why the fuck is this even happening in the first place? They're just going to be like, China enemy, and then China's going to be like, America enemy, and it's going to be go all in, kill them all, you know. so it is imminent. And when you add in, like now we have multiple parallel entrance opportunities into this conflict with the situation of China and the situation in surrounding the waters of Taiwan. So you have two avenues of approach to engage in this conflict. Like they're just doubling down. Like they're just putting in a trigger backup in case one of them fails. So I would expect this shit to kick off like imminently. In terms of a draft, so when this conflict starts, you're fucking sure as fuck to see a draft because they are not going to be able to pull in people. And it's extremely important for any law enforcement, especially on like the local level that's not subverted, like people that are not completely fucking, worshiping money and still have some semblance of like a sense of ethics and morality. It's extremely important for law enforcement in that capacity or in like federal government of dudes that are, in there and, hanging out, watching the shit show unfold. It's really important to understand that once this kicks off, once it kicks off, the entire effort is going to be to, mainline it into, or converge it into mainstream consciousness, all that blood in the United States to get them converged into the effort of fighting China. And so I would guess you're gonna see like extremely fucking heavy propaganda that's going to, you're going to see people that are critical of like Afghanistan and the Iraq War, like coming out and talking about how like you have to go to China. You know what I mean? Like it's a necessary thing. And you're going to see Chinese conflict as a necessary thing. And they're probably gonna, there's probably gonna be a lot of justification of it based off of in people's interpretation of like economics, like it's economically necessary, which is a sure fucking sign that it's completely unnecessary. The important thing for getting dudes that are like the dudes that are going to fight this are going to be vets and people that are obviously active military now and police and people that are vulnerable to not understand, for them to understand that this Chinese engagement is for the purpose of pulling strength out of the United States and weakening it abroad. And that is going to be accomplished by leaking intelligence. So you should understand that like the United States does not have custody of its intelligence apparatus. So like, if you're in the military, I'm sure that you're fucking aware that like the higher up you go, the more compartmentalized it goes. And then you have a lot of dudes that are in very key nodes in the intelligence apparatus that, make firewalls in terms of like the way that information goes up and down between the levels. And this is, obviously like this is claimed to be for, protecting information, but the reality is that what's really going on is this is for being able to hide where information goes, and so that it can be done with whatever it wants. And it should come as no surprise, like when you consider this, it shouldn't be any surprise because since especially 2016, since Trump's election, you've seen nothing in politics but like leaks and fighting and fucking like shit that just, you can't tell exactly what's going on, but that there's like free access to information flowing around, and people have access to information that, under the purported security of the United States' intelligence system, it's obviously like, not working, right? Like there are some serious breaches that are going on all the time. So this is no different what you're seeing in politics and in the media, the fucking free flow of information. This is no different than what's going to happen when we go into World War. And so like the disposition of any of our forces overseas are entirely compromised the entire time. And the only thing that's holding back their, exposure to vulnerabilities in the battle space is simply if that's like a part of the program or not. And so, I would imagine that what you will see if if the United States does not wake up to this, what you're going to see is like a full-scale deployment and draft, like a traditional war, but with new weapons, tactics, and techniques. And then you're going to see you'll probably see initial success, and then you're going to start seeing certain engagements go really fucking bad, like high losses that don't really make a lot of sense and don't have a lot of explanation. And when you start seeing that, you should understand that it's a good possibility that you're getting intelligence leaked on the disposition of military forces, and the purpose of it is to make them vulnerable in their weakest aspect, which is intelligence. So you can be as high speed as you want on the battlefield and have as many devastating weapons as you want, but if you don't control information, then it's being intercepted in between. And I'm not talking about China, by the way. I'm not talking about Chinese intercepting it. I'm talking about China being passed information, critical information, secretly. Now, you can imagine what kind of how in that kind of situation it would be impossible, regardless of your strength or any other factor. It'd be impossible to win, because it's really wars are, nation state wars are fought where the nation state is like an organism, and if you don't even have a brain that is sending the right signals to your arms, and your brain is actually sending your signals to the person that the other organism that you're fighting, then it's obvious how compromising that is and how vulnerable that makes you. Understanding this and getting this idea in whatever form you can to the American population, and then particularly the people that are going to be pulled into fighting this, is the only way that you're going to be able to avoid a draft. Because if you have, of course, an individual can refuse a draft, and then they're going to be subject to the repercussion of law in whatever form that takes place. And then the other aspect of it is societal pressure. So if you're a strong-willed person and you understand what's going on, but the message doesn't get out, then you're going to end up, having to make the choice of how you resist in your own capacity. And if the society isn't on board, you're going to feel the repercussion of society being directed at you in anger because they feel like you don't support the United States. The way to get around that is to understand that while this war is going on, we are going to be, purged at home. And that may take on different degrees at different times, but you better rest assured that when the war gets done, whatever it looks like, when whoever fucking is still alive and comes back here, you're going to come back to a fucking changed United States, and it's never going to be the same. And the opportunity of this war, permits that change. And, you're going to see all this resistance to the state that exists right now, go away. And I would imagine at the height of it, at its most intense level, you're probably going to see people disappear. So understanding this is really key to being able to have the fortitude to find the courage to resist in the way that you will. If you can get the message out to enough people, then that can take care of the societal aspect. It is possible to win society on this and make them understand that we don't need boots overseas. We need fucking military-aged males at home and engaging in their community and spreading the word about this shit, so that we can put our communities in a defensive position where they're not vulnerable, both economically and in terms of their potential of strength, so that they can resist federal intrusion and top-down control as they transition us into further world government. And understanding that is key, and communicating that is key, so that the people that people are going to get drafted. It's going to happen no matter what, because the Chinese war is for certain, and if they have a Chinese war, then you better bet your ass that a draft is certain. So people are going to get drafted no matter what. But if you can spread it, if you can spread the awareness of this concept, this understanding in whatever way you will, then we may be able to diffuse the sociosphere aspect of it, to where maybe the government can pump out propaganda as much as they want, but people will see it just like the rest of the fake fucking media that we've been dealing with for the last, 2 decades. And once they understand that, then they can realize, the reason that a person would go to a draft to be motivated like a young man, the reason that they're going to be motivated to participate in a draft is because they're going to identify the draft as serving their country and serving their families and their people. And if they understand the greater implication of this, then they'll see it as it really is, where it's like the highest way that you can serve your people and your nation is to understand that we are extremely vulnerable and we are about to enter into the most significant national security threat that the United States has ever, been vulnerable to. And you're going to be much more effective and useful in serving your country in a much greater capacity if you understand that we need you here. So I hope that kind of answers the question about how do you avoid a draft. Ultimately, it's going to come down to your own personal decision, and you can better bet your ass that the people that are going to want to try to draft you are not going to make it feel easy, but I support you, and I support you seeing the big picture as it really is and supporting the actual United States of America, which is the people here, not the fucking people in Washington. These people that are doing this shit and starting a fucking world war with China are going to, this is going to culminate if they're successful. Like, imagine if you could somehow prevent 9/11 with foresight of understanding of the greater big picture that's going on, and imagine if you could stop 9/11, or imagine if in that case you couldn't stop 9/11, you could stop the invasion of Afghanistan or Iraq, and how beneficial that would be to the United States. This is like, we're dealing with that type of situation, but times like 100, because the Chinese war is not going to be like Iraq or Afghanistan. This is going to be a fucking world war, and it's going to result in millions of deaths. And probably a lot of those are going to be American, I would assume. So I hope that you guys understand that, and I hope this makes sense. This is, I am not critical of the people of the United States or the Constitution, and I think that's what we need to secure here. Is like we need to actualize and secure our Constitution, and we need to hold people accountable that are our representatives. They need to be held accountable to the degree of it's unacceptable for them to let federal funding come in and supersede their representative authority and allow unelected agencies and unelected pressures that are guided through money to come into our localities and tell us what to do and guide the direction in unison into destruction. People in sheriff's offices and county representation and municipal representation and state representation need to be made aware of this, so that the demeanor of the group mind in the United States changes into a defensive posture, and we start providing things for ourselves. Because if we don't, we are already logistically in an incredibly vulnerable position where we're going to start losing options soon, and it's just going to get worse. And you can already see that with COVID-19 and the lack of autonomy in the municipalities to say no. And people are fucking weirded out by it and uncomfortable, and they know that something's wrong, and our representative government is turning their eyes the other way and ignoring this this catharsis that individuals all across America are going through right now. And that is not the role of representative government. The representative government is our actual government, and we need them to fucking step up and defend the people of the United States and their interests, and help us get out of this vulnerable position that we're in economically. And if you don't do that, this, when I say this is not a threat for me. This is just an inevitability. If you don't do that, and if you take money, if you're taking money against the Constitution and the constituency's interests, you are going to end up in a situation where you are going to be removed. So and that's whether or not that's accomplished by force or diplomacy is like anybody's guess. But like that's at least the nature of the natural conflict that will arise if the United States wakes up, and they are waking up. It is slow, and they don't know exactly what's going on, but they're going to get there. So you can fucking hedge your bets if you want and go along with the banks, or you can be an honorable representative and do exactly what the fuck you were elected to do, and you can fucking help us. Long live the Republic. I love you guys.